Hello, my name's Steve Maloney. I work for the Recovery Academy. Doing two things. I do peer support, coordination, and another big part of my role is delivering training around psychosocial interventions. And I'm going to talk to you today for a little bit about one of those interventions. It's called Behavioural Activation. And hopefully it'll give you some ideas in a sort of self-help framework of reintroducing or getting back into some of the things that you were maybe doing before the pandemic and the lockdown. It's something that works through focusing on activity. So it might be helpful in getting back in some of the activities that you were doing prior to lockdown, or maybe reintroducing some new activities that might be helpful in getting back to the new normal, or the sort of normality that was around before things started to change with the COVID situation. So all the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about is going to be available on the website, and it'll be in sort of worksheet self-help form, so you'll be able to print them off or download them and work through them electronically. So behavioural activation is built around a cognitive behavioural therapy framework. Lucy, my colleague, spoke to you about unhelpful thinking. So if you think of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, Lucy was focusing there on the cognitive bit. She was talking a lot about unhelpful thoughts and how you could use strategies and techniques for working with those thought processes. Behavioural activation is the one in the middle, the B, so it focuses more on the behaviour, the activity. So maybe a combination of both those things would be really helpful. Some people focus more on behaviour and find that helpful, and then the cognition, the thinking sort of falls into line a little bit more once those behaviours start to take place. So the first thing that's important to establish in behavioural activation is the link between mood and activity, and there's a little cycle here that is the first worksheet on the website. So it's establishing the link between maybe we're feeling a little bit low, depressed or anxious, and then we tend to do less things, less activities. And these activities are a lot of times the things that make us feel like we've got a sense of enjoyment, like we're achieving things. So if we're feeling low, depressed or anxious, we start to do less activity, which gives us less of a sense of achievement and well-being, which makes us feel a little bit worse. So we feel a little bit more anxious or a little bit more depressed maybe, and then we do less of these activities and we can get into this sort of downward spiral. So it's important to establish, if you're doing this in a self-help framework, the link between mood and activity. So where does behavioural activation sit then? Like I spoke before, it focuses on the activity. So this is where behavioural activation takes place. We focus less on the moods and the thoughts and more on the activities. That doesn't mean that they aren't important, but we tend to focus more on activities, behavioural activation. So if you were like me and you were thinking, should I have a go at this, I'd like to know a little bit more about it. What's the rationale? Is it going to help me? What is behavioural activation? So there's a little snapshot of what it is on the website, the third of the worksheets. Behavioural activation, we identify activities that maybe we used to do or we're currently avoiding, and we then establish valued directions and follow these directions with a series of planned activities that we lay out in timetables. And basically one of the key things about behavioural activation is breaking things down into achievable chunks and steps. So we start with the easiest goals and build up to the more difficult ones. And the tools that we're going to work through will show you how we can do that in a framework. So one of the key things I try and work with when I'm working with people or when I'm delivering training is a lot of times if we're trying to establish goals for ourselves, and a lot of times when I've worked in services, people come up with goals and they don't really have sort of lasting impact. It's really important if we're going to be setting out and doing some things around making changes in ourselves is to establish goals that are in line with our values and our core beliefs. So the first thing that we try and do in behavioural activation is establish some values. So this isn't about setting goals yet, it's just looking at our values, the things that are really important to us, the things that sort of steer our lives. And if, like me, you were asked, what are your values? It's not something we think about day to day. So there's a little prompt sheet that gives us some ideas. And I'm going to work through some sort of case examples. So there's a little bubble sheet, it gives you some ideas. You might look at this and think, oh yeah, that's the way I've always tried to live my life, or those are the things that are important to me. Or maybe you can just cross a few out and see what's left over. It just gives you some prompts and some ideas around the values, the core beliefs, the things that you find important, and try and live your life like, or let your life sort of steered by. And you can see here the examples I've picked out: to be reliable and dependable, to have discipline and self-control, and to be supportive of friends and family. So those three values are something that someone might pick out as being important to them. And it's important to sort of establish here, if you're doing this in a self-help framework, that we're not about doing anything about anything at the moment. We're just looking at the things that make us tick, the things that are really important to us. Goals that come from core beliefs are usually things that we establish easier and they have longer lasting value. So, taking that forward, this is another worksheet that helps you then establish where you want to be going in the future. And again, this isn't about being specific. One of my colleagues came up with the idea, it's about looking at some wishy-washy goals, things that you'd like to be like, not specific, definite things that you want to do at particular times. It's just a bit of a wish list, and we've entitled it My Future, Hopes, Wishes and Goals. So again, there's some prompts in there, and there's a couple of for maybe others that we haven't put on the worksheet because you might have goals around different particular areas. So in line with our values prompt before, this person might think in terms of health, it's really important to me just to be as fit and healthy as I can possibly be. It's not a specific goal, it's just a wish, it's just a hope for the future. And in terms of the finances one, to not be worrying about my finances all the time is something that I'd like to be like. And in terms of relationships, I'd like to be a better son to my parents. I'd like that relationship to improve. So it's just basically hopes, dreams, wishes for the future. It takes its prompts from the values discussion that you had with yourself or with a therapist if you were doing this earlier, in terms of the sort of values that we spoke about earlier. So that might be a 10-minute thought exercise or just a little discussion with yourself to look at the values that are important to you. And then we look at establishing that in terms of how you would like things to be in the future. Just some ideals and some hopes and wishes. So the next thing that's really important to do in behavioural activation, and this is really important to say, that this isn't a test, it's not something that puts any pressure on yourself. It's useful to, before we start to look at setting goals and putting a direction in place based on those values, is just to get a little snapshot of what things are actually like for you, for me at the moment. So it's like a typical week, looking back on what sort of things have I been doing, what sort of things are going on in my life at the moment. So it's a little diary looking back at the last couple of days, and sometimes when I might have filled this in or people I've worked with might fill it in, there's a little bit of pressure put on ourselves because maybe we're not doing very much at the moment, things are difficult for us, and that's perfectly okay. It's just getting a snapshot, a true baseline of what's happening in our lives at the moment. So again, in terms of our particular case study, Thursday and Friday have been filled in, and that's fine. It's not about filling it all in, and sometimes people find it difficult to fill in these things. It's just about making a start. So Thursday and Friday morning, stayed in bed all morning. Thursday afternoon, watched TV on the flat on my own, and listened to music till 3 a.m, which is perfectly fine. It's not about putting pressure on ourselves, it's just a true snapshot of what things have been like for us up to now. So it's a baseline activity diary. So that gives you hopefully a sense of, we've looked at our values, we've looked at some hopes and dreams and wishes maybe, a wish list of what we want things to be like going forward. Maybe there's a little bit of a recognition here that things aren't working out as I'd like to be, and that's perfectly okay. There might be a little bit of a discrepancy between the values, hopes and dreams and things that are actually going on at the moment, and that's perfectly all right. That's really common when people are anxious, depressed, low in mood, struggling, me included from time to time. So now we get into looking at how we can put some strategies in place based around behavioural activation. So the next worksheet that we've got is about looking at things that we've maybe been doing already, so some of the good things that are going on in our lives, some of the things that we're already managing to do, some of the things that we've identified that we hope to be doing in terms of our values and the goals that we've spoken about, and some of the things that maybe we used to do and would like to start doing again. So it's a little bit of a combination of those things, but we're starting to break them down now. And there's a recognised framework where we break these down, where we look at things that are either routine, so things that are a sort of framework in our lives, the things that give our lives structure, like the scaffold that build our lives around. So here we've got examples in the worksheet: vacuuming, showering, cleaning the kitchen, shopping, etc. And our case study person used to do mum and dad's shopping every Thursday morning. That was a routine thing that used to take place before I got the way I am at the moment, anxious, low in mood, or things change in terms of the lockdown. Pleasurable activities are the things that make us feel okay, make us feel good about ourselves, the things that keep us ticking along and work on our self-esteem. So meeting up with friends, meeting up with family, walking in the park, etc. And our person here used to have a brew and a chat with mum and dad after doing the shopping. It was a pleasurable activity that used to take place, and maybe that's something now that I would hope to be getting back in place. And I'd like to get back to walking in the park, which is something that we're starting to be able to do again now. So a pleasurable activity that used to take place that maybe someone would think I'd like to reintroduce that into my life. And the necessary things are really important in terms of anxiety and low mood. The necessary things are the things that maybe we've been avoiding doing, like opening mail, paying the bills, the sort of things that if we don't do them, then they cause us stress, and stress builds up. And again, what we've seen in that cycle between activity and mood, those are the things that make us feel less good and make us feel a little bit unwell if we don't do them. So in a lot of cases we may have been avoiding those sort of things, opening mail, paying bills, fixing things that need fixing. And our person here, in terms of the example, need to pay back some money that mum lent me because that's something that's been causing me a little bit of distress. And remember in line when we looked at our values, the person that we spoke about in the terms of the case study, it was really important for them to be building that relationship with their mother and father. So the next worksheet is about now getting into particular specifics. So taking a mix from the pleasurable and routine and necessary things that we identified that maybe we were doing or would like to be doing or have been avoiding doing and would like to get back into our lives. One of the key things about behavioural activation is breaking things down into achievable steps. So here again, we've got a worksheet that works with the easiest goals, the medium difficulty goals, and the hardest goals. And we've got a mixture of those goals from the previous worksheet. So the least difficult for this person they've identified would be to get to bed for 10 p.m. So rather than stay up listening to music at 3 a.m., the person has recognised that it's important to get to bed a little bit earlier, and that'll set them up for the things they hope to do for the following day. Another least difficult is to go to the park and just see how I feel. So rather than go a long walk around the park, just to turn up to the park, walk there and just see how things are. Sometimes it's about breaking things down into really achievable steps. Sometimes people might be finding it really difficult. The house has been in a mess. There's a lot of cleaning to be done and it's getting a little bit overwhelming. So the first achievable step for someone in that situation might be just to plug in the Hoover and then sit down and have a brew, rather than think I've got to do the whole house today. It's just about finding achievable, easiest goals, making that specific on your worksheet, and then seeing how you get on with it. Medium difficulty, maybe start to pay back some money, just some money to mum and dad, rather than the whole amount, just start to pay back some sort of small amount. And the medium difficulty might be then to, next time I go to the park, maybe walk around the park a little bit, rather than the whole 2 miles that I used to do, maybe just go for a little walk in the park a few hundred yards. The most difficult, for various reasons, has been shopping for mum and dad, but maybe that's something we can look at in the future. And in terms of the walk around the park, the most difficult goal there would be to go for the 2-hour walk around the park. But that's something we can work up towards. The next worksheet is about then setting out some of these activities in a diary form. So we can be really, really specific here now. So things I plan to do this week, again, based on the hierarchy ladder that we looked at previously. We can then look to plan some specific detailed activities that we might want to carry out in the coming days. So this person again, things I plan to do this week, get up early Monday morning and have a shower, and then have a little chill in the afternoon, chill out and listen to some music, and then there's a specific goal there about I would like to get to bed at 10 a.m. because I've got things I'd like to be achieving tomorrow. So Tuesday, get up early and have a shower again, and then go out to the park and just see how it feels. So we're getting specific details now from the previous worksheets that we've worked through. And then in the evening, the getting back into that routine is to get to bed at 10 p.m. again and set myself up for the day. So that's an activity diary that we're making appointments with ourselves to some extent. So we're setting out the things we like to do in detail and giving that a go in the coming week. So In an ideal world, we might carry out a lot of those activities and things start to work out and we start to feel better about ourselves, we start to get on a bit of a roll. But in reality, sometimes people find it difficult, myself included, in carrying out some of those things. So we've got a couple of other worksheets which we can look in some sort of detail. So if things haven't worked out too well, then we can look back on some of the things that went a little bit awry, and we can have a little bit of reflect. So the activity that I tried to do, how important was it to me? Well, it was quite important because it came from that values conversation that I had with myself, so it meant a lot to me. So what didn't go well? And have a little think about what sort of things I can try. Maybe I can break it down into smaller steps. Maybe I can think about focusing on some of my other goals and put that on a little bit of a back burner. So it gives you some ideas and strategies for looking back on things that didn't go too well. That might then lead you to sort of think that, and it's a similar layout in terms of a framework, some activities I plan to do, and it's a little bit of forward planning. Again, how important is pretty important to me, and things that might be difficult, things that might crop up that might get in the way of me achieving this goal. So it's a little bit of forward planning, and what sort of things could I try? Well, maybe if it doesn't work out, I'll try and be a little bit easier on myself. Maybe I could speak to someone to get some support with it rather than just be doing it on my own. So it's a little worksheet that helps you look ahead to things that you might be trying out and give you some sort of ideas and strategies. So those are the worksheets that are around behavioural activation that we'll put on the website. There'll also be on a little step-by-step guide that breaks it all down in terms of how I would work through this in terms of a self-help framework. So it's the steps laid out and are in common everyday language in terms of how I would make a start with it, what sort of comes in the middle, and then how do I carry on with this. Behavioural activation is something that people try out and start to get on a little bit of a roll with. It's about finding activities that make you feel good about yourself and make you feel as though you start to achieve things. It breaks that cycle between mood and activity. Gives you a little bit of a focus, and hopefully the tools that you see on the website will help you with some of the structure and break it down. Remember, it's always about trying to be easy on yourself, but also trying to make some goals and activities that are really in line with things that are important to you based on those values that you had a little think about before you got started. And then it breaks things down. I mean, I've worked with people through anxiety, they've not been able to go and get a haircut. So one of the steps we'd first put in place would be, rather than go and get a haircut, it would be have a little walk round, find a hairdresser that looks quite friendly, and just look through the window as you're passing by, and that would be your first step. And then your next step might be to just pop your head through the door and ask what time they're open till and stuff like that. So rather than just making things too overwhelming, it's just about breaking things down into small, achievable steps and building from there. So hopefully that's some ideas and strategies that might be helpful in making changes or getting back to some sort of structure as we move out of lockdown. So it's all on the website, as we say, so good luck with it, and I hope it works out for you.